You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 473, our coverage of the third episode of the Bad Batch Season 2 called The Solitary Clone. And we called it. We said The Solitary Clone was going to be about, well, I almost said Commander Cody, Crosshair. And, yeah, but it was kind of obvious, too. So, but we did say that was going to be about. And arguably, we'll get into this in kind of our initial thoughts, but it was such a great episode, and I'm going to go out there and say that it's probably been one of the best, maybe the best episode that we've had of the Clone Wars, both season 1 and season 2. It might be a big jump, but it's definitely up there in terms of what we got. And kind of crazy that it was only Crosshair and, of course, somebody named Commander Cody, which we'll get into a little bit later, and not the entire cast of the Bad Batch. So pretty good writing and everything else on all accounts there. Speaking of good writing, Jonesy's with us tonight. Jonesy, welcome to the show. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, sir. How about yourself?
I'm good. I am good. I stayed up for this episode, and I'm glad I did because I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, this was a pleasant surprise for an episode 3. I think we were talking about in Discord that a lot of people, I think they were a little uncertain about it at first, but then it sunk in. They're like, "Man, this was really, really good."
Yeah.
Like really good.
Yeah.
I think a lot of things we'll talk about it, but there were just a lot of different things that made this episode. And I was thinking about you the entire time with just the sound and the music going on. It was really incredible. It was very Andor-ish in some ways. It was really, it actually worked so well.
Yeah. I've got in my notes here, I've got a couple of moments where I completely geeked out on the sound effects for nothing else was going on. I mean, everything else was going on, but for whatever reason, they stood out so eloquently for me. But before we get into that, let's why don't we talk a
little bit of news, huh?
Yeah, I was going to pull this up because I thought the cover was amazing, and of course I didn't. So we'll have to just talk through it. But you made me aware of this, but apparently Marvel's got this series called Black, White, and Red.
Right.
And if I'm not mistaken, you correct me if I'm wrong here. This is them kind of cover. They have certain characters, and they're kind of, I'm going to call them violent issues, but I don't know if that's really the right term because I don't know. We want to associate Star Wars with necessarily violence, but of all the characters they've chosen to be part of the series, they picked none other than Darth Vader.
Well, it makes sense. So the Black, White, and Blood series, for those who aren't familiar with it, they've had characters such as Wolverine, Elektra, and Deadpool. So clearly very deadly characters. And
aggressive characters? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So just here's a quick one sentence to give you a flavor of what to expect. It says, readers will see Vader unleashed like never before in tales of terror set throughout the Dark Lord of the Sith's brutal history. So I've got the cover up here if you don't have it, but from Alex Maleev is what they shared.
Yeah.
But it won't fit on one screen. But Alex Maleev, of course, is a fantastic artist. He just did a one for Fantastic Four that was absolutely brilliant too. But it won't fit on
his run on Daredevil was pretty phenomenal. Some of the covers that he did for that back in early aughts, maybe around that time frame. But yeah, well-known artist.
Yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, it's an interesting. It was interesting that it was Star Wars because it's just not something that comes up very often that you get these types of things. And like you said, that's an intentionally violent. I mean, and I do expect violent to be it. Can you see that?
Yep, I just pulled it up there. So yeah, you've got Vader who's taken a knee. He's got his helmet removed, which we know is probably just, for the look more than anything. But then you've got the backdrop of the twin suns with his lightsaber up in the air like rays. But it's just
it's almost like this red
image.
Yeah, it's like this red negative space, almost that kind of vibe. It's a bit of an awkward pose the way he's holding the lightsaber, but still very striking cover. I mean, very striking cover. And these series have been pretty well received. They've people enjoy them because they're much more adult oriented. So this is an anthology series. There'll be 4 issues of this, and I believe they start in late April. We'll see if that date sticks, but as of right now, I think April 26th is the first release date for those 4 issues. So pretty exciting. Really interesting at Star Wars. I did not expect this. This was unexpected. So a pleasant surprise. And I hope it's not all just talk, right? Because they used a lot of, in this article, they were talking a little bit about, I think it's Jason Aaron who's doing this, and he did the Vader Down series.
Yeah.
And the Vader Down series, of course, was very well received as well.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of promise in that one. And Peach Momoko is doing some of the covers and some of the art. So if you're a fan of Peach Momoko, which we are, then you're in for a treat there with some variant covers and maybe some art. I don't know if that's art inside the book though. That would be really cool too.
No, it's a good point. It wasn't clear whether or not she was going to be doing inside work or just exterior covers kind of thing. Hopefully this series turns out to be worth its weight and worth its cost, because I feel like this is something I'd be really excited to kind of bring back to our main show here and kind of discuss. If not, we'll probably at least give it a Patreon run, or I think Lauren's got her chops all over it as well. She's already wanting to talk about it. So
I will say this though, the covers for the Black, White, and Blood series,
mm-hmm.
or Black, White, and Red, I think some of them are called, but they have been absolutely killer. I mean, no pun intended, but they have been absolutely brilliant. They have been so amazing that they are worth the collection alone. So definitely keep your eyes out for this one if you are even remotely or tangentially interested in comics, or you know someone that is. This will probably be a series you want to pick up just to kind of have in your collection too.
Right. Hey, and now I'll let you take this, but get ready for a lot of apologetic sentences here from Jonesy. He's just lashing at himself now. But what happened here?
I'm very upset with myself because apparently back in November, maybe as early as August, actually, there was a leak that had come out about what the Wave 6 of the Legends books were going to be. And one of them that's on there is a Republic Commando Hard Contact. And I just realized this today because you, Laura, and I were talking about, what to do, because there's a bit of a lull between the next High Republic. So she's looking at some books to do. And I'm like, well, hey, if you want a good clone Jedi ship, which I know that's y'all's language, that's how I get y'all hooked. I'm like, there's this little series called Republic Commando over here I've heard a little bit about. Heard it's pretty all right. And of course, Lauren was like, yes. And I'm like, that's my girl. Yeah. So anyway, but that's coming out in, I guess, in the original thing, it said late April. When I did a little digging today, it seems like that might have been pushed back about a month to maybe towards the end of May. That's right around my birthday, by the way. Just
okay, yeah. Good to know.
I don't have my paperback copies of these books anymore. I think I was like, why do I need paper copies? I had all my new Jedi Order books, everything else, back from the old days, and I was like, why would I do this? And just probably sold them at half price or something like that, And
all right, we get it. You want it? We'll buy it for you. Just say it.
Right. I mean, Disney's listening too. I mean, they.
Probably send you a copy.
Yeah. They don't send us those.
So how did you miss this? I'm just know. Very disappointed in you.
I don't follow book release news or book leaks very closely because honestly, there's so many of them. Until they get a little bit closer, I don't always pay that close of attention because I'm like, okay, why? I'm not going to get trailers. There's not going to be things for us on the show. Mm-hmm. So I'm interested about it, but I honestly didn't think they were going to go back to this because of the fallout with Karen Travis was relatively public. And it was so disheartening in a lot of different ways because people loved this series, especially the first 3 books. Absolutely loved the 3. I think there were 5 total. And so when that fallout happened, it wasn't pretty from what I understand about it. And I hope I'm wrong about that. So maybe this is an olive branch, or maybe they're just republishing books they know would sell. But yeah, I'm happy to see it come back into kind of the spotlight because it was a really good series, and I hope people pick this one up. Highly recommended, excellent series. If you 2 things: one, again, if you want to ship a clone and a Jedi, but 2, really, if you want to learn about the traditional Mandalorian culture, like including like the Mando'a, like language, actual culture, the nomadic, just all like clones learning to be Mandos, like actually learn to be Mandos. It's pretty incredible. It's if you like that part of Star Wars, this is your series of books. I'm not BSing you. It's that good.
Right.
And if it's not, Mike at eargluemedia.com is your complaint department.
Well, you say that, and one of the things that I thought of was by then we'll be past season 2 of season 3 of Mando, correct? So
we'll be on the very tail end of our
but had they released it around that time, I guess here's where I'm going. I just wonder, since we're going back to Mandalore, we assume we're going back to Mandalore, and we're going to probably get into the culture and all of that stuff. It seems like they may have been doing that from a timing perspective, and it would be interesting to see how much they leverage from that series. How much makes its way in canonically into Mando season 3. That would be pretty impressive and amazing if they did that.
It would be some, yeah. I didn't even think about the overlapping with the TV show. That would definitely be. They're so far different now, but you're right that really classic culture that we really didn't even get from Clone Wars.
Right.
The ancient history, I think, is really probably more aligned with what we get in those books. I think that would be really cool. That's a really good idea. And
there might be clans. There might be, that are still on Mandalore, much like, we've talked about this. There's all these different sects of Mandalores, right? Or Mandalorians. So why wouldn't there be one that's still holding on to those very old traditional ways,
Right.
But
Jeff seems to remember it as a touch anti-Jedi from what he recalls. That may have been a little bit true, but I think it was more like life from the clones' perspective, and especially this elite, clone group, and they're dealing with loss, and that's what the first book is, and change, and working together, and different than the Republic Commando group that was in the video game. This is Omega Squad rather than Delta Squad, but eventually they do kind of cross paths, and you get some of that. But I don't remember it being super anti-Jedi. I mean, it definitely did whenever it went to like Order 66 and then Imperial Commando in the last couple of books, but it was probably not seeing them favorably all the time, but I think it was more of a, I don't know, just more of a piece of seeing how they get along and what that relationship actually looks like.
Just 2 more comments. Rob says, hope they finally do an audiobook for it. That would be fun.
That would be fantastic.
And Lauren said, I feel like the Legends re-releases haven't been advertised as much as new releases anyway, speaking of why you missed it. So,
Thank you, Lauren.
Look, we just dedicated,
yeah,
but we just dedicated 5 minutes of the show to talk about this. So I think we've done it to due respect. Hopefully you're feeling better about yourself.
I am. And actually, thank you, Rob, for making me feel really good about the audiobook, because he is absolutely right, because they have released Shadowhunter on audiobook, and we've actually gotten these for advanced reader or listener copies too. So we've gotten a few of the audiobooks for the Legends material, including Shadowhunter, and that's the Darth Maul story, and a couple others, I think Rogue Squadron and whatnot. So it would not surprise me if they did do it, and if they did, I'm definitely gonna listen to that one. I've got so many Audible credits.
It's got a great cast, the characters, right? So this would lend itself, I think, to a really great audiobook.
I agree entirely.
Yeah. Okay, there you go, redemption. All right.
Thank you, everyone, for appeasing me for a few minutes. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah. And those that appease us the most are our Patreon members.
I like that segue there. Nicely done. Yeah, huge part to our huge thanks to our now part of the tribe members: Mike, Rob, Lauren, Dante, Risk, Justin, Sharkman, Dan, Daz, and Isabella, many of which are with us on the live stream tonight. And of course, our Delusions of Grandeur members, Rod, Kathy, and Hard Counter. Thank you so much. If you are listening and you'd like to come out and chat with us live during the podcast or during the live stream, cantinacast.com/YouTube is where you will find us. Again, we try to do this on Sundays and Thursdays. Even the Patreon live streams are free for everyone to listen to and watch and interact before they go into the vault whenever we release the podcast. So cantinacast.com/YouTube if you are interested in that. Subscribe, hit the little bell. And if you are interested in Patreon, and that content does start at just a couple of dollars a month, cantinacast.com/Patreon will get you all the information you need. And of course, reach out to us over on Discord, cantinacast.com/Discord. I think I've done plugging things, Albert.
And this Sunday will be our Patreon
there's more.
episode. And there's more. This Sunday will be our Patreon episode. Sunday, what is it? January 15th.
Right.
And we're going to be doing a Commander Cody centric episode. And the title is
CC2224.
Is that what you landed?
Oh, no, it is not.
Okay. All right. Title's still being worked on.
No, it's Cody's Conflict. Cody's Conflict.
Cody's Conflict. Okay, that's what we landed. All right, Cody's Conflict. So we'll be getting into a lot more detail on Commander Cody. We'll talk kind of high level on some things. I mean, we can't not talk about him in this episode. Right. But some of the more speculative things, and certainly I kind of want to get into his headspace a little bit, because he's been, he's had such an incredible journey, and where we left him off in Revenge of the Sith was probably not the most favorable position, and yet we get this complete turnaround here in this episode. And so I think there's a lot there that we can kind of dig into, speculate, and really ask the question I think everybody's walking away from this episode is he going to come back? Where are we going to see him next? And I think we've got some ideas and thoughts on how we could work him back into this series, or maybe something else later down the road.
Absolutely. So if you want to hear all about Commander Cody, I will get that posted tomorrow. I'll get it scheduled. So if you are subscribed, you will get notified that we are going to go live Sunday evening. So do it.
Do it. All right.
Do it.
I think we're ready to talk about this show.
We're ready to do the Solitary Clone?
Yeah, let's do the Solitary Clone. Okay. So let's, as normal, I want to kind of get your initial thoughts on how you felt, what stood out for you on this episode, what was good, what was working, that kind of thing. So you want to go ahead and start here, and I'll give people credit. They're chiming in on the credit on the comments here.
Yeah, I mean, wow. I'm with you. You said at the beginning of the show, this might be one of your favorite Bad Batch episodes, and it's really difficult for me to argue. I think if you definitely remove premieres and finales, absolutely, I think probably easily top one. I think it is. I'm struggling to find another one that really it just hit all of the emotional bells like this one did.
Yeah.
And I would say I enjoyed this better than the first couple of episodes for this season.
Oh,
of course.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, man, this one really came in strong. And again, the mood that you get, it was almost like I hate to use the word noir because it wasn't, truly a noir, but it had that vibe to it, right? It just had that feel to it. It very much felt like that first episode of Andor in a lot of different ways. It was this kind of synth vibe on the music front sometimes, and that eerie kind of synthesis at times, or synthesizer rather, which just, man, mood wise, it was just so perfect. The lighting and the wall, the memorial with the dark and the way that it glowed at night, and them and the conversations they had there and then in the plaza. And it was just really working for me. I love how, Crosshair, he kind of takes a journey here from start to finish. It starts ends in the same place of sorts, but just just that journey that he's already on, you can already feel the wheels clicking. Cody's wheels are ticking the entire time. Going back and watching this a second and third time, when he glances over with the Jedi comment to Crosshair, every time you watch it later on, you're like, oh man, there's just so many things going through his head that we'll talk about on Sunday, for the most part. But it was just really great to see that. And then Crosshair not able to sleep at the end and beating his alarm up, and clearly something on his mind. It just it's speculation overload, man, about where this character, what he's thinking, what's possible,
right,
where we want him to go next. So it was just it hit all the points for me, and had a little bit of action. We got a great throwback character with the Clone Wars, which was really cool with Tawny Ames. So that was a blast from the past, and of course Mina Bonteri, the reference there, and then we'll talk a little bit about that episode, I'm sure, but. So it was really cool overall. I just really enjoyed this episode. This felt like what's ironic is it reminded me a bit of like the Onderon arc from Clone Wars in some ways, like tone, I think. And what's really odd or really funny is that these characters have links to Onderon. Yep. So it was just a bit of, I don't know if that's irony or if that was intentional, but that tone really felt that same way. So I'll shut up now. What was your first impressions from what you've not already shared with us?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said earlier, it's one of the strongest episodes of the Bad Batch, if not the best episode. It's hard to put this up against, like you said, premieres and season finales, because those are very dramatic. We've got some big moments in those episodes, and while this maybe didn't have the big galaxy-changing Kamino going into the water kind of moment, but from a character development perspective for both Cody and Crosshair, I think they did a really great job. I really enjoyed the tone of this episode. It felt a little bit darker. And we'll get into some of the specifics here. I mean, a very stark contrast to what we saw in the first two episodes. And right. I think for anybody that was really kind of providing feedback about, people aren't dying and it's not real war because they're stunning. Well, you can, they kind of did the inverse.
Leave
of
it
that.
To the Empire to take care of business.
Yeah, right. So it's not so much. So it kind of reinforces this idea that it's not so much the show as it is the characters, right, and the people that we're witnessing, right. So from all of that, this was, in my opinion, a love letter to the Clone Wars, like beginning to end. There was, you could have plucked this out of any one of the seasons of the Clone Wars, right? Everything from, we had clankers high-fiving each other. We had the Roger Rogers, the droid Decals had come back. We had the droid tanks were in here. We had, of course, Clone Force 99. We have the clones themselves, Commander Cody. On and on and on. On top of that, all of the visual effects, all the sound effects, all of the music just kind of really set an incredible scene and mood, atmosphere, kind of to what you were talking about. I did pick up on some of the Andor vibes in here that were, and I don't know if I would have picked up on that had Andor or had this come, been released when it was supposed to, whatever. But definitely some parallels that were kind of running in there. I think more than anything, those parallels really are around what was the Empire doing? How were they coming in and taking over these colonies and worlds, and that whole process that they went through? Because by the time we get to, later on in the Empire, I mean, they've got their firm grip on a lot of different stars and solar systems and all that. So all that was great. Let's see, the music, just to kind of call out two places. When that blaster bolt goes through the turret of the barrel.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, it's like, I don't know how long they spent on getting that right, but it was like perfect. That was one that stuck out. And then I had
or the sound effect.
Yeah, the sound effect.
Yeah, that was dope.
And like, if you have like spatial audio or like 3D audio turned on, when the droidicons start coming in and they're rolling around.
Oh, you can
hear them like rolling above your head down into the bottom, and then finally they come up and pop up, and it's like right there.
You can hear the timbre difference too. So you can hear, so timbre is kind of like your tonality of how dense the sound is, like, so how rich it is, but you can hear that. Then, I mean, the sound design on this show is absolutely bonkers, man. It is so good. I mean, so good. Just top to bottom sound design. Give them an Emmy.
Right. It's not
done.
Messing around.
Just go and do it now. Just do it preemptively, since no one's going to give us one otherwise.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, so again, I really enjoyed this episode. Again, very different from the first two episodes, but to be fair, like we said, and if you didn't catch our coverage of episodes 1 and 2, I think we both agreed that really needed to be just kind of a reintroduction to the series, and we weren't going to get any kind of really amazing big moments in it, right? It was just to kind of set everything up. I saw some comments today, because again, you guys know I kind of float around some of these darker circles to see how it's being received, and I think overall, honestly, the reception was pretty good. But I kept seeing a trend of people saying that it was unfortunate that this series put out its best episode, and quote, the Bad Batch weren't even in it. And I'm like, are you it's so dense, right? It's so obtuse to think that we're getting an episode that's Crosshair centric, but because Omega's not in it, because Hunter's not in it, it's not worthy of being in the Bad Batch, essentially is what they're saying.
Hold the phone.
Yeah.
Crosshair is part of the Bad Batch.
Exactly.
Whether he's part of the squad or not, he is he is the show. The whole crux of the emotional conflict is Crosshair.
Right.
So that is just ignorant.
It
and
is
inflammatory, and it's working.
And we're going to write a stern letter to that person.
I am.
Get started on that, will you?
But tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. Yeah.
But yeah, it's just it's crazy. I mean, people and a lot, of course, they're laying a lot of the blame on Disney, like, oh, they can't get this right. They don't know how to write character stories, and it's like,
BS, man. I almost had to say it out loud, but BS. They were writing a damn good story on this.
Yeah.
And they wrote these two characters amazingly, and Rampart played his part really well too. So. No, you guys keep doing what you're doing, writers that have already written the show 8 months ago.
Right. Yeah.
You keep at it.
Exactly.
So one thing I did have a reaction to, though, not to prematurely wrap up your stuff, but one thing I did have a reaction to was Dooku, and like how twisted he has made everybody.
Yes.
You don't know what's real and what's not real with that character. And we just talked about all this, just in the last week. Yep. And, Tawny saying that Dooku was right and stuff. It would just, I think I literally, I wanted to stand up and just be like, what the hell now? Because it was like Dooku was instrumental in making sure all of this was right.
Yep.
Of course he was right, but then he was also wrong. And
it speaks to how manipulative somebody like Palpatine was, right? How it's weird and funny and tragic, and also
so much.
Yeah. But I mean, the way that he's almost romanticized now,
Yeah, exactly.
And we know the truth, and I think that makes for good storytelling. Like, it's just being able to see like how much of an impact he had, and how much he duped people into feeling like he was essentially a false prophet.
Right.
So that's credit to him. It's a credit to Palpatine, of course, the mastermind behind it all. Of course, credit to the dark side, et cetera, et cetera. But really great stuff there. So, I'm with you too. Like when she said that, my maybe because it was relevant because we just talked about Dooku, but yeah, my jaw just dropped and was like.
And we'll talk more about her because she knows things too. So for her to make that comment is interesting.
Yeah.
So we'll get to that.
Well, let's start with her. That's a nice segue because we are introduced to Tawny Ames again. Desix was not something that I remembered from the Clone Wars. And then of course, we had this Governor Groton, who's, kind of this lackey. These are the implanted cowards that are given these governor titles and really just trying to come in and take over. But this is a carryover, right? We're looking at the Separatists now through a different lens from how we did in the Clone Wars.
Right. I love
and they're
that,
not necessarily the bad guys, which is kind of crazy to think about. Right. I mean, at one point I was cheering on the droids, right? The B1 droids.
Right. Because they're not really even Separatists. They were independent by the end of things. And this is very much, and you feel free to kind of recount the story here with Tawny Ames and Mina Bonteri. They were friends. And Mina Bonteri was a senator for her home planet. And they were trying to do peace accords. I mean, they were trying to bring an end to the conflict. These are the episodes, if you remember back in season 3 of the Clone Wars, where Padme was secretly rendezvousing with Mina and her friend was Tawny. I don't remember if Tawny was actually in it.
I don't think she was. Mina was. I mean, that was the Heroes on Both Sides was the episode.
Right. And this is where, what was his name that him and Ahsoka.
Ahsoka. Yeah, that's his little
Lux,
love interest there that she had.
Yeah, the kid.
Yeah, Bonteri was his last name, but I'm now drawing a blank on his name. But
I want to say it was like Lux or something like that.
Yeah,
Lex.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, whatever.
Research on the flyer.
We'll call him Professor X. But I mean, so it's a callback to that episode and what they were. There you go, Lux. Yeah. So they were trying to bring peace. I mean, they weren't really playing sides at that point because they said everybody was going to lose, and it was all kind of by design. And Mina Bonteri was assassinated. But when they brought all of this stuff to the and like they said in this episode, when they brought all this stuff to the Senate, it was stricken down. And of course, Palpatine was front and center on that decision. But
yeah,
there's a lot of animosity there. But they want to be independent. They want to be left alone. Just keep your hands off my cookie jar.
Yeah, and the Bonteris came up in a number of episodes after that. Never shown. They were always mentioned because they were kind of at the forefront of trying to bring peace. Right, between the Separatists and the Republic back then during the Clone Wars. There's the fate of Lux Bonteri is still kind of up in the air. Like I think people, at least I was personally speculating that maybe he would show up in this series. That's not happened. Maybe he does show up in another later series or something. But they were a prevalent family that had a lot of power, a lot of influence, and they were really honestly trying to work with the Republic on coming to terms and ending, the war that was going on. So there was good intentions there from them. So to see somebody like her who, I mean, she lived, her friend being assassinated and everything that transpired in the war, and not to get to the very end, because I will talk more about it later, but just the fact that she was willing to lay down arms and really believe and trust in somebody like Commander Cody, right? It says a lot about just how much she really wanted that peace. And then when the realization came that it wasn't coming over, it was really, for me, it was very sad. That was like a really powerful moment. But sorry.
Right. And I mean, this is where the Dooku stuff comes in too, because Dooku was responsible for ordering or at least organizing the assassination of Mina Bonteri. And so Tanya visually, learns that and figures that out. But it's a really interesting that she even can stomach saying his name, right? And much less saying that he was right, that something worse was coming, which I thought was a really interesting comment because that's usually I think for him, it would have been more of a scare tactic. Like if you don't join the Confederacy or the Separatists, then you are, something is worse going to replace it if they win. But he was always, of course, working the other side of it at the same time. He was working against the Republic, but also working with the person who was going to ultimately create a conglomerated empire, effectively.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So he was just going to merge the companies after a time. And Dooku was privy to all of that, but even his followers still seem to think that, he's basically a martyr, right?
Yeah.
In many ways, even though his own people on Sereno, of course, think obviously very different, but in other spaces, they still look at him as a hero, like you said before.
Yep. Jeff brought in an excellent point that I completely forgot. He says, I wonder if we see Lux in this season of Bad Batch. The Inferno Squad novel suggests he was part of an early rebellion effort. So anybody that's not familiar, the Inferno Squad novel was the tie-in book to Battlefront 2. So we got to see Iden Verso and the Inferno Squad. But yeah, his name was dropped in that. And I remember when we covered that book, it was something we highlighted because of all people, right? I mean, he is a beloved character for all the, for a lot of good reasons. And then for everybody that wanted to ship him with Ahsoka, because I generally think Ahsoka did kind of have feelings for him. That was her little fling, although it never really transpired. Nothing ever happened.
Puppy love, yeah.
Puppy love. Love was in the air, right? So yeah, it would be awesome to see him come up at some point in some capacity yet again, because I think, again, his fate is still undetermined. We don't know exactly what happened to him. So, all right, so we'll come back to we'll talk more a little bit later on that, but I want to get to the scene, that's kind of this opening scene with, seeing the everyday, I'm going to call it drab life of somebody like Crosshair. This is, some 32, he calls it 32 cycles, right? I assume that's 32 days. For over a month, he was kind of stranded there on Kamino. And he's coming into the cafeteria. And just prior to that, we get this discussion around the defense recruitment bill.
Right.
So
which we've heard a few times, right?
Yeah. And it is interesting to see that, that what the Empire is doing this is part of that whole process and how they transition away from clones to, volunteer soldiers and scripted soldiers. But it did sound like this bill had failed before, which I thought was kind of cool that, he's been trying to push this.
Yeah, it's interesting that they're still taking votes, right? So the Senate is still operating in some capacity, right? So it's not, again, it reminds you that we are still not that far removed from the Republic. And a lot of those activities, and the Emperor hasn't vanquished them all. They're still lingering around. He's probably pushing the ones that mean the most to him. He probably doesn't care a whole lot. It's a bit of a lame duck session in some ways. But it's interesting that this one thing is something that continues to be blocked. And I can imagine losing a clone army, which won you the war from your respect, protected you from Jedi, point two. And then 3, there are so many of them that trying to change over your army doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Right.
And so I could see why that would make any kind of public or Senate nervous. And there's really, and I'm sure a lot of people are like, well, why? We've bred these beings just to fight and die for us, so we don't have to conscript our own public. Why on earth would you want me to change that? That's
right.
The mentality of the galaxy. It's wrong, but that's the mentality of the galaxy, I would presume. And so why change that if you've bred people to die for you? So
yeah. So I got there was something I noticed too, right? So when he comes in, he sits down, and this doesn't occur to me until like third, fourth viewing. But this is going to sound trivial. The eating conditions of where he's at, like it's a stark contrast. You remember I don't remember if it was I forget now if it was season 1. I think it was season 1 of the Bad Batch, or it was one of the episodes in
like in the cafeteria
the cafeteria scene
with the
season
food
6, I think is what it was, right? When they had the food fight, yeah.
No,
you look at the conditions there.
That was Bad Batch because Omega was there.
Okay, so that was that's right. So it was very different. Like and I get it, it's on Kamino, so it looked very sterile and clean. But when you watch this scene, like he's like, conditions are dirty. The food looks worse, right?
Yeah, it's very small.
Yeah, and it's just, I don't know. It's something stood out about that, and I don't know. Again, probably reading too much into this, but if I'm the Empire and I'm trying to kind of weed these guys out or hope they disappear, I don't know what it is, then, I'm probably not going to invest a lot of money into it. But it was interesting. What really kind of stood out is the fact that they see Crosshair they don't see him as one of their own. And we know this to be true, right? They know who he is. They know he's not a rag.
Even after all this time, yeah.
But even after all this time, right? They don't want to sit with them. They're not loyal to him. He is different. So nothing's changed in that regard. But it is sad because, he is he's a solitary clone. He's out there by himself, living amongst these other, regs. We also there was moments in here where we got to see some of the new Empire recruits, scripted or not. You could tell there's a difference in their look, but he's kind of on an island, no pun intended here.
Yeah, exactly. And I kind of want to go back. Let me know when you're ready to talk about Crosshair more specifically, because that's the part I'm interested. But yeah, I'm with you. The eating environment. Stephanie kind of made the joke in there. Speaking of eating, will that poor guy ever get to finish a meal? Because every time he sits down to eat, he gets a few bites in at best. I don't even think he got a first bite in at the very end.
Yeah.
Before the announcers on their
PA system came on.
CT 9904, please report to the front desk of the Boas Club. It reminded me when I was a kid. Like, it was a kid, you had the PA go on whenever like your parents were coming to pick you up. I was at the boys club in the afternoon. Yeah. Chris Jones, please come to the front desk of the Boas Club. Your parents are here to pick you up.
Thank you for that insight.
Time to go.
Yeah.
Hey, you've got to look into a sneak peek into the childhood of Christopher Jones. There you go.
So on top of that, right, being alone, at least from Rampart's perspective, he does see him as loyal. He does see him as dependable. which I think is a huge compliment coming from somebody like him, because we know it could be fake. Don't get me
Well,
wrong.
he seems a little incredulous. He's like, "You were there how long?" And he tells him, 32 days. He's like, "And you came back.
You came back. Wow.
Why?"
So, but whether he's truthful or sincere or not, at least he's given him credit for the fact that he is those things, and he is, right. I mean, that's kind of partly why he's in this thing. We'll get to that at the very end. Some of the questions as to why he's hanging around, but he's seen that. He's seen as loyal and dependable. But we know from Rampart and the Empire, that's only going to go so far. It's only a matter of time before he's just like all the other clones, right? And he becomes a liability. He becomes a risk. And I think that's probably likely where this is going to head at some point if Crosshair doesn't, pull the chute prior to that. But yeah, so I want to talk. So you said you want to talk about Crosshair. That 32 rotations, just quickly. Yeah. That means he was alone. We had speculated that within a matter of hours, no more than a couple days, somebody would have come by and picked him off this platform that he was practically stranded on. Yeah. It looked like he went longer than that, though.
Yeah, I mean, basically a month in our time, and presumably with very little, food or supplies. I mean, there's obviously an ocean there. I guess he could have somehow come up with food. Maybe there were remnants that he, scaffolded from. But yeah, that's got to be, torture, especially. I mean, it's not a super sunny place in Kamino usually, but it's a very torrential downpour and dangerous place. Rocky seas and everything else. So very stable platform, but it just posed a lot of questions about what he was doing out on that platform. And then the other question is, how long has he been back at the Imperial Barracks too?
Right.
Because it looked like he was bored off his rocker when he was laying there. So he didn't look like he was sleeping real well. And he was kind of rolling around, had a really hard time waking up. That may have just been waiting to be medically cleared. He's just bored and nothing to do, but he doesn't have his gear out. It seems like a very mundane return to duty until he's cleared to go back and back into the field. But I wasn't sure. I mean, how long do you think he would have been sidelined for with that? I mean, if he was stranded for a month, I imagine he was pretty severely dehydrated, probably quite emaciated. He didn't look very much different than how I remembered him, at least, like tooth thin or anything like that. So do you think it's been another month or so since that, since he got picked up, or has it been longer than that? What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, so we already have the time jump. So the question that I had, and I don't necessarily think this needs to be answered, but he was stranded for 32 days. He was rescued, right? And then we have a span of months, if not a year, whatever that time jump is.
Yeah.
What was he doing during that time? Was that rehabilitation? Was it, recovering? That seems like too long, especially with like Bacta and all that other stuff. So I don't know what was happening there. I think maybe the more important question, and this goes back to what we had talked about during season 1 or episodes 1 and 2 of season 2, is was he ever approached by the Empire and said, hey, did you have any contact with Clone Force 99? Or did they just presume that what they did was effective enough and that they sunk Kamino, and with that went the Bad Batch and Omega? And so he was never even asked that question, because I think it's a very different story. It's a very interesting story if they approached him and asked him what happened. Because in my head, he's saying in either case, I still believe, and I hold this because of what's happened, especially in this episode, that he did not tell them, no, they let me go, right? And so for me, that's the little light that's still kind of burning within him. And you can make arguments of, okay, he's just, it's tit for tat. They saved his life, so he's trying to save them, etc. But, come on, it's Star Wars, right?
So the one thing we don't know, though, is whether this episode took place before the events in episode 2, though. So the timeline here, it's not clear if it's actually
they didn't really,
it's sequential, because Rampart so if this was truly after episode 2, and we should probably assume it was, then he already knew that the rest of Clone Force 99 is out there, right? And them reactivating Crosshair is in direct response to that, and that they just kind of benched him. They were probably just going to leave him there to rot, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But with them reactivating, they're like, okay, we need to see if this guy still got it. Let's see what he can do out in the field.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Let's see what else, because I'm with you. I doubt they didn't ask. I mean, they had to have asked, right?
Right.
Where's the rest of the squad? Because they know they were down there. And so did Crosshair really, lie, or was he even in any kind of condition to really say anything? But at some point they had to have asked. So,
well, yeah,
again, I'm with you. Presumably he's not told them the truth.
Or they're asking, how did you survive? Right. Everybody else died but you. And I mean, it's not too far to think that if he survived, the Clone Force 99 probably survived as well.
I mean, they're all resourceful, right? I mean, this is what
Exactly.
they do. I mean,
Exactly.
this is a survival, group squad. So
Mhm.
presumably, yeah, if one of them has more than one of them has, maybe not all of them, but at least another one has. So
Yeah.
I'm with you.
So
I
from
think,
there,
yeah,
yeah,
but I like the idea that I think that he's probably not told them anything, and yeah, that gives you a little bit of hope. I think I said in Discord, maybe in response to Jeff, I think this episode actually gave me hope where I didn't really have any before, that Crosshair, can turn that corner. There actually is the ability for him to turn that corner and actually maybe not be a good guy, but be less of a bad guy.
right. So from there, he gets assigned to Commander Cody. That first interaction was very interesting. Risk had said it in the comments. He said Cody still has that badass helmet too. Or he's got to stand out in some way.
Yeah, and they took his orange away. That was really sad.
Well, and that's part of it. I mean, that was the whole Crosshair says I didn't even recognize you, right? And he says, oh well, there's a lot has changed, but that is the conformity, right? They're stripping away this uniqueness of them all,
Right.
everything from visually, right, removing the coloring to going back
names.
to using their numbers, right, rather than their names. It's all part of the Empire's global plan here, but it was kind of interesting. I mean, I love the fact that they met at the memorial, as kind of their meeting place, and just we know that they have a mutual respect for each other. These are heroes of the Republic, together again for the first time.
So, what did you think of some of Cody's comments about asking the questions? I heard rumors that Clone Force 99 went rogue, and a little bit of a banter there with Crosshair. But what did you think of that exchange?
Yeah, what I found interesting was that he knows that they went rogue, but the question, and we don't need to answer it here because I don't want to save it for the show. Like, what does he know about Kamino? And does that ever come up? And a bigger question that came from this episode that I think we'll get into. Well, we will because it's in the show notes. We'll get into on Sunday is what would happen if the clones today found out about what the Empire did to Kamino, right? To me, that becomes a catalytic kind of event for them. But I don't want to get into that too much. But overall, yeah, I mean, I enjoyed the banter that they had back and forth. Cody seems a little kind of tongue in cheek with some of his comments, so it's really hard to read him in this.
Exactly, he seems a little bit different, right? You can't quite get his angle, and of course, when Crosshair makes the comment about the Jedi, makes them traitors like the Jedi, his glance over at the first viewing, I'm like, I don't know what to make of that. But after you watch the whole episode, then you're like, okay. Because he requested, so I think this is important. So he requested Crosshair to be part of his squad. And I'm beginning to think that, I mean, of course it was intentional because he asked for him, but I mean, was it with the intent, and we'll talk more about this on Sunday, but was it with the intent of exploring, hey, do you know what's going on with Clone Force 99? And is he in that same kind of bucket with them of maybe disobeying the programming and finding a way out? Because clearly by the end of this, he's got a lot of questions and questioning what's going on and takes matters into his own hands. But
yeah, I mean, I think he's trying to walk a fine line here of being loyal to the Empire, but at the same time, do you get the sense, at least the way the conversation played out and that specific question about Clone Force 99, you kind of get the sense that Cody's starting to struggle with this a little bit. Like he's trying to play both sides. And he's not feeling right about either one of them. When you can chalk that up to, what's happening all around him, or the fact that the inhibitor chip is starting to wear off. I mean, it's again speculation. We don't know for a fact, but there could be multiple things that are playing into that. But it does feel like he is kind of feeling him out for more information and kind of see where is he at, right? It's happening all around him, and to know that that Clone Force 99 is not, they're just as at risk of churning as they are, the regs. I think that has some significant impacts on him as well.
Right. And it was like an Andor, right? You're struggling to find information because you can't always trust the sources of information that come through. They come in bits and pieces. They get a rumor. Maybe you hear the rumor a few different times from a few different people. So you're like, okay, there's some amount of truth to this, but we don't really understand what's going on. But you got to be careful though, because you don't know who's going to start looking at you, questioning your loyalty and questioning which side of the fence you're playing for. So it's a very delicate balance he's got to ride here, especially with someone like Crosshair, who's just super intimidating to be around, period, anyway.
Yeah.
He's just eternally in a bad mood.
Yeah. Doesn't smell much.
Not a real people pleaser. Yeah.
No. We got the good soldiers follow orders line. So we said that was going to happen.
Oh, I thought you said you didn't want it to happen, though.
Did I? You have no
so.
proof of that.
Roll back the tapes.
Pull the tape. Pull it. Let's pull it. See what it is. No. So either way, it was appropriate.
Like,
at least
though. It was very tongue in cheek, though. I agree with you there.
And in the context of the conversation, it makes sense, especially now having seen the end of this episode, which really makes a lot more sense.
I love the way he said it, though. Good soldiers follow orders.
Yeah, and he's like, mm-hmm. Oh, which they actually subtitled, by the way.
They did, yeah. I watch everything with the subtitles, too, because I don't want to miss who said what, or if we get a name or we don't normally get them.
Yep. So from there, we get to this, quote, diplomatic envoy that is heading in. And I love that Tawny allowed it to come in. Like, she's not being fooled here. She's seen this many times, right? She allows them to come into space because that's going to give them a better opportunity window to take them out. And she does. I thought that was honestly kind of cool that she was able to, that she had repurposed all of these clones, or I'm sorry, repurposed all of the clankers, the droids, for her own doing there. We get into this whole Dooku thing about, being, he was right in the end, that there was a corrupt republic, that it was collapsing, becoming something different, and that he saw the coming of the Galactic Empire. And that was a line when she says that he saw the coming of the Galactic Empire, that really it burns me, because he was behind it all. I mean, he was one of the key stakeholders, if I could just quote some business lingo here.
Helped create the clone army.
Yep. So a bit of irony there in terms of
it's so frustrating, though. Like, I mean, it's a good frustrating, right? Because these characters they still feel the way they do, and you have to remember they don't know everything we know. But you look at it, you're like, oh my gosh, why is everyone so stupid and I'm so smart? But really, you just have all the sides, and they don't.
Yeah,
be nice to people.
And you do a podcast, and they don't.
And that's right. So I therefore know everything by default.
If only, sir.
If only. That's right.
So I thought the siege happens at this point, the taking of Desix, and we're not going to get into every single thing. I thought maybe we could just kind of, there were a lot of great moments in here, honestly, in terms of how this kind of went about. Everything from, I was not expecting the ship to go down, right?
Right.
But what it did is it turned into the Crosshair highlight show, the highlight reel. Like, you really got to see how much just one single, member of that Clone Force 99, how much of an impact and how much of a difference they can make in these situations where normally that would have been kind of the end of it. I mean, I don't want to sell Cody short, but without him, what would they have done? I mean, that mission would have failed. I mean, it was over at that point.
And we got another Indiana Jones moment too, with the trust me, and looking over him. Trust me. It was great.
Yeah.
3 episodes in a row. It's fantastic.
But what were some of the highlights, I guess, of the bigger moments that stood out for you during the?
I mean, the shot down the barrel was really cool. I mean, you kind of knew it. You're like, why is he missing? Is he just trying to get their attention? Because I'd just take him out. But you saw he was doing it intentionally to get them to draw themselves over.
Yeah.
But like you said, before, the sound effects and that were just absolutely amazing. I love that we got the little mirror pucks again, and we just get to see.
To well, that was when they were in the training room, but I don't remember which. Again, it's all blurred now between
first
season 6 and
I think a lot of it was whatever it was. I think that was first season of Bad Batch, but anyway, but we got the little mirrors, and I think that was really cool, especially where he's just he flicked it in there and it pinged everyone. I don't know how that's even possible. It's not, but it's a cartoon. But I mean, still,
did that even land? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but did that land? Like, it showed it flipping. It didn't look like it stuck. Like, he shot it. He timed it and shot it while it was in midair.
I think, while it was flipping in air, I believe.
Yeah.
So it was incredible. And
yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, but it was just, like you said, it was just the droidicas, how I love it when the little grenade stuck to the battle droid, he just slowly fell into the shield and blew it up. I was like, man, that's just so perfect. And of course, the rolling of the droids, again, this goes back to Saw Gerrera training. If you remember those episodes in Clone Wars where they have to roll the grenades at just the right speed so they slip into the shields, and it didn't work and it bounced out. So it was just great callbacks to Clone Wars as well. It was just a great siege. I mean, it was well done. It was great to see the battle droids, the tactical droid again, still there and being the hub, for everything, is just still very consistent. And I mean, who doesn't like clones off in a bunch of battle droids? Just so much fun. Yeah.
I think I had all the same moments. The only ones I had on here were, I like the comment about you do make things interesting, right? He's talking about to Crosshair. I enjoyed that. The other one I had on here was not to jump ahead here, but Sim saving Cody's life, basically, or Cody saving Crosshair's life.
Oh yeah, with
Because
the knife. Yeah.
Yeah, because that becomes a very important piece in all of this, and we'll get into that because I don't think enough people are talking about this, to be honest. But the fact that Crosshair had this realization at some point during that scene that he was going to die. Like Cody was sitting there doing what he was doing, but this thing was about to choke him out, right, and kill him.
Yeah, those assassin
And had he not
droids
stepped in,
are no joke. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, and had Cody not been there, that would have been the end of him. And I think this is why he repays that debt a little bit later, in the finale. But so that was good. I did enjoy again the where he says nice throw, nice shot, just them kind of working together, right? Really puts Cody in a very positive light for a lot of us who kind of left on a sour note given how things went during Revenge of the Sith. And I don't know that I'm still over it, but I'm willing to give this guy a shot.
Well, and I like that Crosshair was actually the one to initiate the compliment.
Mm-hmm.
That caught me off guard. I'm like, whoa. Crosshair started this?
Yeah.
Man, no, this is backwards. So I thought it would have been the other way around. But you got Jeff's comment on here. They used the droid so well and made their return count. Crosshair commenting how the droids are the weakness, and Cody closing the show saying it's a fine line between a clone and a droid. Yeah, and we'll get to that comment too. Because that was a callback to, I believe, who said that before? Was that Rex?
Yeah, Rex has said that before. Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a great...
Rex said the TAC droid voice is unbeatable. Yeah, good. I've left that out in my love letter to the Clone Wars series notes. But yeah, the tactical droid, same voice and all.
Yeah, I mean, you can really say, so Cody saves Crosshair's life, and you can really say that Crosshair saved Cody's life too at the very end. When he takes out the governor after Cody's ordered to do it and won't.
Well, and so sorry, but yeah, that's the piece that I don't think people are talking about enough. Like, it's very easy to see this as, oh, it's just Crosshair being a cold-blooded killer once again. That's not what it's about. What it's about is he knows Cody. Cody saved his life. He's got respect for Cody. He knows exactly what's going to happen. The words out of Grotten's mouth are, if you don't, what is it? I was trying to find, I actually wrote it down because I want to talk about this, but I'm not going to find it in time. But basically he was going to say, if you don't, he says, I gave you an order, follow it or face the consequences for, and he's going on to say disobeying an order or disobeying whatever. Right. And it's right at that moment is when Crosshair takes a shot. Because he knows if he finishes that sentence, and because Cody's not going to do it, right? And if he finishes that sentence, Cody's going to get court-martialed, likely going to get killed. And so him firing on Tawny is nothing really to do with the fact that he is protecting Cody's life at that point. He's returning the favor for that.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that's exactly right. I think he knows that Cody, there's something going on with Cody. He's getting that impression already. I think Crosshair understands a lot of the things that are going on around him better than he wants to lead. I think more than he wants to admit. But he wants so badly for everyone just to be with the Empire or to, kind of just champion that cause and not deviate from it, that he will give them a lot of latitude for a while. And we saw this even when he's turned in, off his own squad. He gave them a lot of opportunity to make the right decision.
Yeah.
And he gave Hunter numerous chances to make the right decision, from his perspective, at least. So but it was really cool though that he actually protected Cody in this case, knowing that Cody's probably still going to face some sort of discipline, if he didn't jet. Right. He's probably still going to get reported. And I think Cody knows that too. So that's probably why Cody has made some of the decisions he's made, because his tenure there was pretty much over.
Limited.
Anyway,
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And so at least Crosshair bought him some time in that regard. And again, Crosshair's like, you know what? I'm so covered in blood at this point that one more life is not going to really make or break me. And I'm doing it for the Empire, and I'm saving my friend. Well, we'll call him a friend. I'm saving Cody. I'm saving this man right here next to me, my brother, repaying that favor for him because it's the right thing to do in this moment. And it doesn't bother me, but I know it bothers him.
Yeah. So in visually, right, you hear the bolt go off. Let me audibly first. You hear the bolt go off, which it's Crosshairs. He's got a very distinct rifle.
Right.
2, that's when the music really kicks in, right? Because it's been pretty good up until now.
You get that eerie, yeah.
Yeah, but we end with that heavy synth stuff that Kiner was dropping in season 6 of the Clone Wars. We saw it in episode or season 1 of the Bad Batch as well.
It's
We
pretty
saw it
much
at Ahsoka.
synonymous with Crosshair doing something dark. Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, that piece, right? You're right. It does kind of play hand in hand with what he's going through, but it continues. He carries that out through the rest of the episode, and then from that point on, I mean, and again, we'll dissect this a little bit more on the Patreon show Sunday, but from that point on, you can see visually on Cody's face how shook he really is, like how impactful that moment from that point on, because not only is, he just went through this whole thing about laying down his arms, he's trying to do the right thing, he's still acting like he's a Republic soldier, right?
Right.
That kind of fell flat for all the right
Well,
reasons.
he's still trying to do the right thing, right? And
Exactly.
he was making progress until the governor's arrogance kind of stepped in, right? But I mean, that was, and from Crosshair, while Crosshair has a lot of patience for a lot of that stuff, he could at least recognize that Cody put his word, to this person and was making progress, and they laid these down in good faith, and so Cody can't go back on that,
right?
Because the clones do have that sense of honor with them, even though they have this requirement to follow orders. They do have a certain sense of honor still, just inherently as part of them. And I know there's tons of examples to the contrary, Cody with Kenobi and whatever else. But
yeah.
In this moment, whatever is happening with the chip, if it's gone or if it's deteriorated or they're overriding it just over time or whatever, but whatever is happening, that moment, Cody had made a decision, and he wasn't going to let his friend. He knew his friend was going to go back on it, so he didn't have to. He helped him not have to.
So, yeah, that whole piece, and this is, well, again, more for later, but for me, this kind of speaks to the chip, the inhibitor chip starting to wear off, because you could argue that if there was anybody that he would not have fired upon, Kenobi certainly was that, right? So in that moment, though, when it first happened, the strongest it could be, and over time it's worn off. And where I was going with all this, though, is on top of what had just happened with the governor and Tawny dying. Now we get another thing that came from Andor, which is take the body, put it on display for everybody to see. Like, this seems to be the MO for the Empire, which is a gruesome thing to think about. I mean, this has never happened in the Clone War, and Cody's trying to take all this in. And well, now that's another question I've got. Like, we'll answer this, but the other question I had is, like, so what has he been doing up until now? Like, was this because he was reacting as though this was the first time he was seeing this kind of gruesome, darker Empire side, and we know that's been going on for some time now, right? So I don't know if he's off doing clerical work, pushing paper on a desk, or he was, doing other stuff. I don't know. But to me, this felt like this was a big realization, eye-opening moment for him, seeing this firsthand. For Crosshair, it's like, yeah, no big deal. I've been here, done that already. But yeah, this all kind of stuck with him, right? And then watching as the troops kept coming in, wave after wave of troops, and going into people's homes and while leaving with their possessions, right? The exploiting of all of their goods and valuables and everything else, because they've got, a big Death Star to pay for. All of that's happening right before his eyes. But yeah, it's a stark difference, right? It's absolutely everything he wasn't, or I guess it's everything he was trying to say that they weren't there to do. This is not peace and order at all. It's actually the quite contrary.
Yeah, exactly. And I know we'll talk about it more in a couple of days, but I mean, I don't know what he may not have seen it like this before. I mean, and we know the Empire is escalating. They don't do the same operations everywhere. So maybe some of the things that he's done, even if they've been more combat related, have been in a more of a war scenario where you didn't have this personal conversation with someone. You didn't hear them talking to you and telling you, coming across a mother and child as you're storming the tower, right? And then reminding them, hey, we're here to help. I mean, it was very much Republic, clone trooper, way of approaching and managing that situation, right? And even when he tells Crosshair to stand down, and then Crosshair does lower his weapon temporarily. Right. So I think a lot of that is he still thinks that they can do this without bloodshed. And again, the speech, man, the speech is what really gets me, and that's where I think maybe for Crosshair and the effect this is going to have on Crosshair is that between that speech and the gusto to go in and try to make it to say no to a commanding officer and then to leave and go AWOL. I mean, he's seeing a trend here, and he's got to wonder when in Crosshair again got to see this firsthand with someone that he respects. That there's got to be something to that, right? And that's why I'd like to think that he's not sleeping and all that. But with Cody, I mean, I can't wait to dig into this scene in particular about what's going on here, and what he's seeing, the Empire, the way that they're behaving all around him. And yeah, is it the first time he's really seen this firsthand? And again, we know, I mean, Empire's still kind of year one-ish, so we know that they're still ramping up this type of behavior. And but I mean, you gotta wonder. I mean, this is why the clones would be leaving. I mean, they didn't fight for this, right? They fought for the war to be over, not for them to go and then turn against the people they were protecting.
Yeah.
And that's what this feels like to Cody, is like, well, hold on, we won. Why are we still fighting when we're still winning? And I'm standing right in front of this person, and now we want to do this. We want to hang them in the streets. You know, that's just heinous, you know?
Yeah.
We don't do, the Republic never did that. This is supposed to be better than the Republic. And so that just feels fundamentally wrong.
Yep. And this leads us to the final question that he asked Cody he asked Crosshair is, are we making the galaxy better? You know?
Yeah, is this new Empire better? Yeah.
Right. And, you know, he goes on to talk about how the difference between the clones and the battle droids is they have to live with the consequences.
Yeah.
I think all of this sticks with Crosshair, right? It has an impact on him.
Yeah.
I mean, we see it visually on him, not sleeping, like you said, the very next day or whenever that was. So how much is it going to stick with Crosshair? I think it's to be determined. I think we'll kind of flesh that out over the course of the rest of this season. But I want to ask you about, go ahead.
Well, again, you see him slip a little bit too in front of Rampart when he uses Commander Cody rather than CT-2224. And Rampart's like, what? Who? You know, and that's, I mean, again, it's one of those things that Crosshair made a mistake. He should know better not to refer to people as their names. They don't have names anymore. They have numbers.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's an interesting one too, of, keeping an eye on Crosshair now, and has that mistake really opened up Rampart's eyes even further? Does it keep a further microscope on him? I think he's probably already there anyway. Rampart knows exactly what Crosshair's doing at all times, most likely.
What about that comment he makes there, Rampart at the end? He says, how funny how isn't it how these clones around you keep disappearing?
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you think he's implying that maybe Crosshair can't be trusted and this is just too coincidental that every time he gets paired up with clones, they suddenly disappear?
Yeah, like he's running the Underground Railroad kind of thing,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah, trying to get him out of there, right?
Yeah, I mean, and again, you use their name. Now you have another comrade here that wants to jump ship right after they've been around you. And there's got to be, where there's smoke, there's fire, right?
Yeah.
And of course, the irony is that Crosshair is literally the most loyal to the Empire of any of these characters that Rampart's surrounding himself with, including officers and whatever else. And yet he's the most critical of, and always, got a watchful eye and just thinks he's going to turn on him in any moment.
Well, funny you should mention that comment.
Okay.
Because I want to segue into kind of our closing final thoughts here.
All right.
And the entire time that I watched season 1, and now, especially with this episode, like what is keeping Crosshair around? Like, why does he still feel, and don't get me wrong, we did kind of cover some of this in season 1. I think we'll probably kind of rehash some of that now for the sake of anybody that didn't catch those episodes. But what is it you feel like is really keeping him around here?
That's a good question. I mean, loyalty and duty are the two that you have to, I think you probably gravitate to just immediately, but man, those are getting chipped away. And I think now we're getting huge blocks of that chipped away with Cody in particular now, and the conversations they had. You could already see the doubt forming at the end of season 1. Right. And that time and all of this kind of reaffirmed that. But now that he's been sort of sidelined and he sees the questioning and everybody seems to have things, and he's seeing what's going on in the Empire too. But he's seeing how all of the other clones, even the regs, are now starting to do this. And he can't call everybody a traitor because, again, it's the other side of it. If you're seeing a lot of behaviors going in one direction, there is a reason why. Revolution is coming. It's still a long ways away, but I mean, it's very much in the, it's beginning. And this idea of revolt is going. But again, he feels like it's his job to keep all of that in check. He's special. He was bred. He's got a lot of inherent loyalty because they created him. They give him missions. They give him purpose. Yeah. And I think for Crosshair, a lot of it is like, without this, does he have purpose? And I think we see this with the rest of Clone Force 99. They really struggle with this a little bit too, right? What is our purpose? Echo struggles with this. My purpose isn't Omega. As much as he likes Omega and she's part of the crew, part of the family, that's not his responsibility. That's not what he lives for. And so finding his place is more difficult than that. It's more existential, or more of this gosh, just a fundamental wanting to do something better for the galaxy and fix this thing that he probably feels somewhat responsible for breaking in the first place. You
Yeah.
know, and so with Crosshair though, he has a similar mentality, I think, where he's like, okay, if I don't have this, then what do I have?
Right.
Especially if he can't go home. So you just go to the place that gives you a hard bed and a cold meal, and they call you every 5 seconds, to go do a mission. And at least it's something that you can depend on. It's something that you belong, even if you don't really feel like you belong there either.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's got to be something like that that's keeping him around. I think it's just because he doesn't know what else he would do.
I think that's the answer. And we said as much when we talked about that. I think we drew on some of the parallels of kind of, if I remember correctly, we were talking about, real life soldiers, right? Coming off of duty, active duty, and
It's a tough
having a hard
transition.
time readjusting to what civilian life is like, right? What is, you're born and bred to be warriors, and I'm kind of oversimplifying everything really here. But as somebody who's back in Star Wars, somebody that's been born and bred to be a combatant, to fight a war, that was their purpose. And without war, then they have no purpose. And so we kind of chalked it up, at least initially, as that was probably it. I mean, there is probably a sense of duty, a sense of honor, right? He takes pride in his work, kind of thing. I mean, he's just the sniper. So I mean, it's not like he's got a whole lot of skills that are going to be real world kind of applicable or valuable once he gets out of here. So I think all of that is really what's driving it more than anything else. But at some point, that's only going to go so far, And I think the question then becomes, so I think he's on the trajectory of leaving the Empire. I have no doubt about that. I don't see how you can continue the storyline with him on that side and constantly at odds with the Clone Force 99. We said last season, by the way, that who would be challenging Clone Force 99? Would Crosshair kind of be that character that's, their rival, is, the antagonist for them?
Right.
And I think that'll probably be to some extent, that'll probably play out. But I think at some point he is going to leave. So then the question becomes, okay, so if he leaves, what is it going to take? Right. And I think you made a good point. It's just this kind of chipping away, the erosion, this natural erosion that's happening with the Galactic Empire, and just how much he's starting to feel isolated. And at some point that seems like it would break him. But where would he go? Right. Does he go back to Clone Force 99? Does he do a cut and just leave and kind of go live his own life? I think all of that's to be explored and determined. I mean, personally, I like a good story, or like a happy ending, if you will. And I think they've kind of set this up, even in season 1. I think it was always set up so that at some point, yes, he would leave, but come back to Clone Force 99. And we got to see the how well they work together, right? We were cheering this team on during that season finale in season 1 of seeing them back together, operating like that well-oiled machine, right? And we thought maybe that would be enough to kind of, hey, give him hope that there is still something there. So I think it's a matter of, not if, but when, and what his purpose will be. Like, how do they help him redefine what his purpose is in this new kind of post Republic era, and with the evil Galactic Empire looming overhead?
Yeah, it's tough, especially when you see someone you respect like Cody leave. I mean, things like that those are other avenues for him to be convinced, I think, otherwise. I think someone like Rex, maybe not as much, because, and I think someone in the chat had mentioned this earlier, the Clone Force 99 had worked with Cody, I think, more so in the past than a Rex had, until those lost episodes were finally finished.
Yeah.
So I think there is a bit more of a connection there with Cody than there is with Rex, aside from Echo, of course. But I'm curious to see how they do it, because it's still, for me, it is still really difficult for Crosshair to leave the Empire willingly. I think that's the one thing that I maybe don't quite align with you on, is that, yeah, the trajectory is there, but I still don't know how it actually happens. And I don't know if it can happen, as I just don't know if he'll ever allow himself to do it officially, and actually go AWOL. And so that we'll have to find out as the season goes on. We did have one comment in here, though, from Rob that said, don't you think Rampart actually does not care if the clones are disappearing? He can't stand them anyway. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, and definitely this all goes into the Defense Act that the clones were talking about earlier, the Defense Recruitment Bill. That's his bill, effectively, I believe. Him and Tarkin, they want that to go into effect to get rid of the clones, expedite that, so these things work in his favor, but at the same time, they're working against what he needs to deliver at the same time. And the more clones that just leave is a problem. I think he'd rather them be killed in combat and things like that.
Well, yeah, and I if it were me, I wouldn't allow any of these clones just to walk away. Like either they die in combat or we kill them all. Like
Yeah, right.
just
Yeah,
mass genocide.
You
They're a
decommission
risk.
them. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, because you can't have them running around there, especially when you got people like now Rex, Cody, Clone Force 99. People,
Yeah,
the rumblings of
you have a very skilled workforce when it comes to
Right.
killing. Yeah.
Yeah, so you don't want these guys just kind of floating out in the galaxy because they're going to become a problem later on. So what do? Right? You put them on these kind of no-win missions, maybe, or you mass exterminate them or decommission them or whatever term they're going to use. I think all that is kind of where this is going at some point here.
And I'm wondering if that's what, at some point Crosshair. Now, granted, Clone Force 99 was always put in positions that seemed impossible. I mean, they were the group that did the impossible, right?
Yeah.
So maybe that doesn't bother Crosshair as much, but it'll be interesting to see what kind of missions Crosshair does for the next, 8-10 episodes, whatever this looks like, to see if that starts to grind on him. Like, no, they're literally trying to kill me. These aren't trying to make anything better. They're just trying to get me killed. Because they don't want to deal with me otherwise, but they'd rather me die in service of them rather than just put me down themselves. Because I still have some amount of value to the Empire. I think the Empire, if they weren't dumb, the Empire would realize that the clones still have a lot of loyalty to them, even if they are, starting to fade away a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good. I hadn't considered that, but that would be interesting if we did get, these missions from Crosshair where they're not giving him ample support, right? Or they are mission impossibles, and he's starting to pick up like, okay, this is starting to smell bad here. Like they're doing this intentionally in hopes that I and the other clones that we've all been dispatched will just die. Right, that's not purpose anymore.
Right. That's the question, right? So
yeah.
His loyalty is commendable, but at what point does he question the loyalty back of where they're going to fulfill their end of the deal? Crosshair doesn't really ask for anything. He doesn't really want anything. He's there to serve. He's there to do his job and to do the things that other people can't.
Right.
Right. And to do what they're told. But whenever that feels like they're the ones actively working against you, that can really mess with you and that can really change some things. So, but for Crosshair to actually see that, it seems like it's going to take a lot more to get there, that he might start to see some of it, but he's not. Either it's not sinking in or he's not allowing him. He's not opening himself up to be able to interpret it and take it for what it's really worth. But again, him at the end of this episode, beating the alarm up, his gear's already out. Of course, that means he's I think that was just recognition of he's back on active duty, compared before where he was on the shelf. But clearly this mission and what's going on with Cody has really affected him in a certain way. And what Cody said to him is really keeping him up at night now.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, it definitely had an impact on him.
And I hope that's a trend. I hope we continue to see that and they evolve that in some way with that aspect of the story.
Alex said, much like Samurai after they were disbanded. So speaking to, what do soldiers do after the war is over? And that's a good analogy as well, because a lot of those guys turn into basically bounty hunters or Ronin, right? Running around Japan and just taking odd jobs and assassination jobs and all that. I mean, you could easily see that if he doesn't go to Clone Force 99, really where he could find purposes as a bounty hunter, right? Assassin, if you will.
Kind of what the Empire's using him as right now. So.
Yeah, it's true. Dale's here. Welcome. Okay, so I think that's pretty much all we had overall. Again, great episode. Arguably one of the best episodes we've gotten, even if the rest of the Bad Batch weren't here. It was a very important episode I think we needed to have. I love the fact that they gave it to us early on. Yeah. I think it sets a tone for a lot of what's going to come, and we're always going to be referencing the events that happen in here. If it's not in our face, like Cody showing up later or whatever, but the fact that we know at least, I think there's some doubt, right, with Crosshair. I think we're starting to see him be more, critical, or at least thinking more about what his role is with the Galactic Empire. And I think they are too, to be honest. And it's going to be interesting to see where those two kind of come together.
Yeah, I hope that we don't have too many episodes in between where we come back to Crosshair. And this tends to happen. I think this happened last season, right, where we had several episodes and then we finally got back to him. And so I hope that doesn't tend to be the case. I hope we do visit him and we keep his story progressing in parallel with what we see of the rest of the Bad Batch, because it is the Bad Batch, and all of these are part of the Bad Batch. All of the folks who don't think this was a Bad Batch episode.
Yes, it was a Bad Batch.
Sorry, it was. And it was fantastic. Love it. Don't be afraid to like it. It's okay. We have your back.
The next episode is faster, and I'm going to go ahead and just say this is probably the racing episode where we're probably going to see somebody like Tech shine from the trailer. But so don't expect any kind of continuation of this, right? Or it's going on. Maybe just break away a sidestep here.
Right, not likely. Yeah. And again, though, with Cody, we start to put the clock on maybe how long until he shows up in one of these episodes. So we'll have to see what that looks like. Hopefully they will wait long enough for us to have the Patreon episode on Sunday.
Yeah.
So we can get our ideas out there.
Honestly, looking at the schedule here, we've got Faster. That's not going to be it. Entombed, and then we've got Tribe. But I'm going to guess at least, at a minimum, when we get to the Clone Conspiracy and Truth and Consequences, I think that's definitely going to be our Crosshair return, if not sooner. But there's some things that I'm starting to kind of feel out now that we've seen this episode that's starting to kind of form up and shape up some of the titles of these other episodes later down the season.
Right. Yeah, and Dale says faster. We should have had an episode that said more intense.
Faster, more intense.
Yep. Just like the acting on Attack of the Clones.
No, that didn't happen. Not in the love scene anyways.
Oh.
Sorry, Lauren.
Maybe.
No, I think she hates that scene too, to be fair. Okay, well, thanks everybody that came out for the live viewing, live recording of the show. We do appreciate all of the wonderful comments and everything. But do you have shout outs specifically of who came by?
Absolutely. Huge thanks to Staff Music Train, Jonathan Sky, Jeff, JJ Skywalker, Lauren, Rob, Risk, Alex, Ippolito, and Dale. Hope I pronounced the name right there. I apologize if I did not. Or Ippolito. But yeah, no, thanks everyone coming out. Like I said, Albert said, cantinacast.com/YouTube. We'll be back on Sunday night at 9 o'clock Central Time, PM. Talk all about Cody.
Cody's conflict. Is that what we said?
Cody's Cody's conflict, Cody's crisis. Crisis on Cody.
Crisis on Cody. There you go. Just print it. I love it.
Right.
Crisis on Cody.
We'll get that posted out in the next, probably by tomorrow. So go out there and hit the bell, and you will be notified whenever we are ready to go. You won't want to miss it. It's going to be a great episode.
Yeah, and we had a lot of new people join tonight. There was a lot of people that joined that didn't say anything. So thank you guys. If you're joining us for the first time, just as a reminder, that is a Patreon show. But if you want to join the live viewing of that, even if you're not a Patreon member, you can at least watch it again before we put it in that proverbial vault. So hopefully you can join us Sunday night at 9 p.m. Central as we talk Commander Cody. All right. Anything else before we get out of here?
Pleasure as always, my friend.
Okay, cool. If not, we'll see you guys in just a few days.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.